Good afternoon. It is Saturday, March 19th, 2022. Welcome to Mountain Torah Fellowship Shabbat teaching. It is the 28th day of the 12th month on Yahuwah's calendar. We're coming up on the new year very soon. I'll blow the shofar and then we'll begin with the Shema. Full orchestral accompaniment. Awesome. All right. You got it, Eddie. Good job. All right, join me if you will. Do you care? Shema Yisrael, Yahuwah Elohim, Yahuwah Baruch Shem Kavod Malkuth Leolam Vaed. Hear, O Israel, Yahuwah is our God, Yahuwah is one. Blessed is the name of his glorious kingdom for all eternity. And you shall love Yahuwah your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength. These words which I am commanding you today are to be on your heart. You are to teach them diligently to your children and speak of them when you sit in your house, when you walk by the way, when you lie down, and when you rise. Bind them as a sign in your hand. They are to be as frontlets between your eyes. Write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. And you shall love your neighbor as yourself. Amen.
Amen.
Okay, this was the readings for today. We'll actually look at most of them. I'm not going to read the Leviticus portion, but we will talk about it. I'm going to read Isaiah with some short commentary, and then we'll wander from Romans to Hebrews to Matthew to Revelation, and then we'll finish. A brief outline from the Leviticus portion, and really this is instructions on how to be reconciled to him, and we'll focus on that. The title of this week's portion, Vayikra, is He Called. We'll talk about the origin of that word a little bit. You can see some things we're going to talk about: the abomination of desolation, a little bit about the temple, and that cut-off word over on the right there is secrets. We'll talk about that as well. I'm not going to read the entire section. I'll share with you all some information going on about the offerings presented in this portion a little later on in the teaching, but I'm not going to dwell on them and attempt to explain them all. What we will do is look at some verses and some individual words. We're going to have a vocabulary day here, Mountain Torah Fellowship, more than normal. And perhaps we can find some practical applications to consider as we look at words. Here's the first two verses of Leviticus 1, the opening words of this Torah portion, the opening words of the book of Leviticus, or Vayikra. Now Adonai called to Moses and spoke to him out of the tent of meeting, saying, "Speak to Bnei Yisrael and tell them, when any one of you brings an offering to Adonai, you may present your offering of livestock from the herd or from the flock." In verse 1, Adonai in the TLV and Lord in the King James Version is, of course, Yod-He, Wah-He, Yahuwah. I just always like to check on that from time to time. The first word we'll look at is the one translated as called in both translations. And here's the King James Version. "And the Lord called unto Moses and spake unto him out of the tabernacle of the congregation, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel and say unto them, if any man of you bring an offering unto the Lord, ye shall bring your offering of the cattle, even of the herd and of the flock." So again, the word translated called in both translations is the origin of the title of Vayikra. So I mentioned before I started the recording that I thought I was just about done preparing my teaching, and then Ruach HaKodesh got a hold of me. So we're gonna go some places you're probably not expecting to for this Torah portion, and so just hang on, but maybe buckle your seatbelts, put your seat back and tray table in the full and upright position.
Let Vicky say that.
Yeah, Vicky, can you say that? Put your seatbelt and fasten your seatbelt and put your seat back and
She knows how to do it.
tray. Oh, you know how to say it. Okay.
Yeah, sit down and shut up.
No, that'll do it.
Oh,
All right, well, thank you. All right, okay. So here's the word. It's not Greece. Greece is not the word. Viper is the word. So what is this word here? Anybody want to spell it? It means name, call, calling, scream. It's not Vayikra. It doesn't start with vet or anything like that. Anybody know what that first letter is?
It's a cough.
Cough.
It's a cough letter.
Cough.
Resh.
Rich. And
Aleph.
Good. So I think it's kind of, if you look over on the right-hand side of the little circle here, it says guests and screamed. So for any of you who've ever had guests that cause you to scream, here's the perfect word for you. You can say it twice. So Kaf Resh Aleph, and it's pronounced Kara. What's where we get the second half, the Bakira, comes from there. The next thing I want to look at is the phrase tent of meeting or tabernacle of the organization in the King James Version. I'm sorry, tabernacle of the congregation. So there's highlighted the two words we're going to look at, or two phrases. And here it is. Who wants to give that a shot?
All.
Aleph?
All. The Aleph, Hey, Lamed.
Aleph, Hey, Lamed. Okay, Aleph, Hey, Lamed. And
Is that pronounced all?
Ohal, or Ohal, I'm not quite sure the pronunciation. You got the right idea. And that's the word for tent. So really just words to add to your vocabulary, no big points to be made here. The second part of the phrase, tent of meeting or tabernacle of a congregation, is meeting or congregation. This is the word for tent here. So here's what the word translated as meeting or congregation means. And it's a word we're quite familiar with. Any thoughts before I show the slide? Spelling?
So Mem,
Mem,
Vav,
Vav,
Ayin,
Ayin,
and D, Dalet.
Dalet. Mem,
It's not
Vav, and
selected.
Dalet. How might that be pronounced?
Moed.
I'm sorry?
Is it Moed?
It's Moed.
Moed. Moed.
It's our old friend Moed. We normally use it to.
Was that Martha?
Moed. Yeah, assembly.
That was
Meet.
Martha.
That was Martha.
Hey, Martha.
That's right,
Hi.
Moed.
We normally use it to describe Yah's feast days, his appointed times with his children.
Moed.
Is usage here consistent with that idea? I think it is. Gathering as a congregation at this house is an appointed time, and certainly on Shabbat it is. So I want to add one more word to your vocabulary. Offer or offering that is used frequently in this portion. Here it is in verse 2. So anybody want to try to spell this? Looks like we got cough again.
Well, that's the cough, the resh, the bait, and in that case, that's the noon.
Noon Sofit. Yeah, so there's your letters.
Noon
Operation Noon Sofit. And it's pronounced korban. You may have heard that korban, and this is used 82 times in the Tanakh. 40 of those are in Leviticus. And just to round that out, it's also used 38 times in Numbers and appears twice in Nehemiah and twice in Ezekiel. So what about the Brit Hadashah, the New Testament? Korban appears directly here in I don't have a slide for it, I'm sorry. Appears directly in Mark 7, verse 11. He was also telling them, you set aside the commands of God in order that you may validate your own tradition. For Moses said, honor your father and your mother, and he who speaks evil of father or mother must be put to death. But you say, if anyone tells his father or mother, whatever you might have gained from me is korban, that is an offering to God, then you no longer permit him to do anything for his father and mother, making void the word of God with your traditions you've handed down, and you do many such things. we've discussed this idea before. The Pharisees, the quote, Pharisees and Torah scholars, unquote, or scribes to whom Yahusha is speaking, would instruct their followers to give an offering to Yah, that is them, rather than to their parents, but teaching against Torah. So here's chapter 2, verse 16, moving along. The Cohen shall burn up as this memorial portion part of its crushed grain and part of its oil, along with all its frankincense. It is an offering made by fire to Adonai. Okay, this is just a short little rabbi trail, but there's a larger principle that I'll get to at the end. I want to look at the word translated frankincense. That's weird. So here it is. Who wants to spell that?
Is it Lamed?
Lamed, yes.
Bet?
Yeah. That's right, noon.
Noon.
And hey. So it is pronounced labona. So that is the Hebrew word for what is translated as frankincense. Please notice the bottom third or so in the red there is incense. So believe it or not, I'm going to take a minute here to learn a little bit about frankincense. And then I'll make my point, I promise. So this is from Wikipedia. Frankincense, also known as olibanum, which is similar to the Hebrew word there, labana, is an aromatic resin used in incense and perfumes obtained from trees of the genus Boswellia in the family something or other. The word is from the Old French frankincense, high quality incense, franc incense. Most frankincense comes from the Horn of Africa and India, but also in Oman, Yemen, and Western Africa. Okay, and then from dictionary.com, frankincense, the use of frankincense is first recorded from 1350 to 1400, and is from the Middle English, frankincense. So whether it's Middle English or Old French, I don't know. It's the same basic word, high quality incense. You may not share my interest in this word, but I believe everything that draws us away from the true meaning of Yah's word is the corruption of his creation. What concerns me is that a word that did not come into existence until the mid-1300s is used by Bible scholars to pinpoint where the Magi's may have come from, or where they may have traveled through on their way to visit the Messiah after his birth. They came from the east. They brought their gifts, including high-quality incense, with them. They did not come from Africa or the Arabian Peninsula. Is this a big deal? I don't know, but I believe it distracts us from the truth of Yah's word when the teaching will be, well, frankincense only comes from this particular area, so they must have come from there, or they must have come through there. No, what they brought was high-quality incense. The word frankincense didn't exist and is not native to the area from which they came. So anyway, just be on the lookout for little things that are going to draw you away ever so subtly from Yah's word. I'm going to jump all the way to chapter 5 now, and then we're going to keep moving. I'll be a little bit here. If a soul sins after hearing a charge of an oath, and he is a witness whether he has seen otherwise. This is the first verse. I'm sorry, I have it improperly labeled as verse 5. If the soul sins after hearing a charge of an oath, and he is a witness whether he has seen or otherwise known, if he fails to report it, then he will bear his guilt. For starters, let's discuss what this verse means. John Lang's commentary, I'm going to read some of, and I think it's a reasonable interpretation. Here goes. This case here specified is that of a witness put upon oath who withholds testimony as to that which is within his own certain knowledge. It is the omission, according to our phraseology, to tell the whole truth. It may also cover the case of neglect to testify when a public demand for information has been made with an adjuration. An adjuration is words means like when they're beseeched or implored, please tell us what you know. The case of giving a positive false witness is a quite different one, and that is treated in Deuteronomy 19, verses 16 through 19. Okay, that's the Lang commentary. We'll get to Deuteronomy 19 soon enough, but as the commentary indicates, it deals with bearing false witness. The situation here in this verse is more along the lines of failing to bear witness when the situation requires it. It is never my primary objective to offend people. Sometimes, however, when we speak truth, such as it has been revealed to us by the Ruach HaKodesh, it is inevitable some will be offended. If what I am about to say offends you, please do not take it as a personal attack. Rather, take it as an opportunity to reflect on what I've said and consider it. If after doing that you're still offended, please come to me privately and let's talk about it. I am providing this disclaimer not really for the present audience, but for those not with us for the live presentation who might hear these words. I'm going to read excerpts from a description of an oath of a well-known secret society. I'm going to stop the share here for a second. So I'm going to read excerpts from a description of the oath of a well-known secret society, along with parts of the actual oath. I'm not going to name it, and I ask that you not ask what it is at the least while the recording is on. This would likely cause the video to be taken down. And here is, I'll begin my quote. That this secret society is the personification of secrecy in its most evil form is clearly evidenced by the fact that before any candidate is raised to a higher level, he is required to promise, declare, and swear that he will not communicate the secrets of that level to those who have not risen to it. Furthermore, he will keep as inviolable the secrets of another member when communicated to him as such, murder and treason accepted, and they being left to his own choice. Here, the commentary inserts a quote from John 18, and I'll share that. I've spoken openly to the world, Yeshua answered him. I always taught in the synagogues and the temple where all the Jewish people come together. I spoke nothing in secret. I add that if there is something secret about what you believe, and that means mental assent and the actions associated with carrying out those beliefs, you are a sinner, if you are even a believer. All manner of verses come to mind about serving other gods and idol worship at this point. And are we not called to always be ready to defend our beliefs? Here's what Peter had to say about that. This is from 1 Peter chapter 3. Who is going to harm you if you are eager to do good? Well, a lot of people. But even if you should suffer for what is right, you are blessed. Do not be afraid or worry about their threats. Instead, sanctify Messiah as Lord in your hearts. Always be ready to give an answer to anyone who asks you for a reason for the hope that is in you. With humility and reverence, keeping a clear conscience, so that whatever you are accused of, those who abuse you for your good conduct in Messiah may be put to shame. For it is better to suffer for doing good, if it is God's will, than for doing evil. Okay, let me continue a little bit longer with the description and the oath. Again, this is, I'm reading, these are not my words, these are the words of this particular secret society. Oath and obligation. I, and you put your name in there, of my own free will and accord, in the presence of Almighty God, and then a few idols are named, do hereby and hereon most solemnly and sincerely promise and swear, as I have heretofore done, but with these additions, that I will not communicate the secrets to the rest of the world. Furthermore, promise and swear that I will not violate the chastity of a member's wife, his mother, sister, or daughter, knowing them to be such. Okay. We'll come back to a little more, but that's enough for now. I want to make sure you don't miss 2 points. First, members are bound by oath to protect the secrets of other members, which really means the crimes of other members. An exception is made for murder and treason. A member may make it the choice in those cases, but in other cases, he has no choice, lest he be subject to the following punishment. Now here, this is from the description. All this I most solemnly and sincerely promise and swear with a firm and steadfast resolution to keep and perform the same without the least equivocation, mental reservation, or self-evasion whatsoever, binding myself under no less a penalty than that of having my body severed in twain, my bowels taken thence and burned to ashes, and these scattered by the four winds of heaven, that no more remembrance may be had among members of so vile a wretch as I should be, should I in the least knowingly or wittingly violate or transgress this oath. So help me God, and keep me steadfast. If you've ever wondered what taking Yah's name in vain looks like, let me reread this paragraph again. All this I most solemnly and sincerely promise and swear with a firm and steadfast resolution to keep and perform the same, without the least equivocation, mental reservation, or self-evasion whatsoever, binding myself under no less a penalty than that of having my body severed in twain, my bowels taken thence and burned to ashes, and these scattered by the four winds of heaven, that no more remembrance may be had among members of so vile a wretch as I should be, should I in the least knowingly or wittingly violate or transgress this oath. So help me God and keep me steadfast. These people are swearing an oath that they will violate Yah's commands. The second point from there, what I read earlier, was that I furthermore promise and swear that I will not violate the chastity of a member's wife, his mother, sister, or daughter, knowing them to be such. So if they don't know them to be such, or if they are, not a member's wife, mother, daughter, or sister, they have no such prohibition. So these are people in a secret society who you would know if I named it, and you probably already know. So that just jumped out at me in Leviticus 5, and I wanted to share that. There's probably not where you thought I'd go with this reading, but like I say, it convicted me in a big way, that particular verse. I do want to read the portion from Isaiah. We won't dwell on it, but let's read through it, and I'll make some comments along the way. So if you care to, turn to Isaiah 43, and I'll start reading at verse 21. Isaiah 43, starting at verse 21, and we'll go into the first handful of verses in chapter 44 as well. These people have I formed for myself, they shall shew forth my praise. This is from the King James Version. But thou hast not called upon me, O Jacob, but thou hast been weary of me, O Israel. Thou hast not brought me the small cattle of thy burnt offerings, neither hast thou honored me with thy sacrifices. I have not caused thee to serve with an offering, nor weary thee with incense. Thou hast bought me no sweet cane with money, neither hast thou filled me with the fat of thy sacrifices. But thou hast made me to serve with thy sins, thou hast wearied me with thine iniquities. I, even I, am he that blotteth out thy transgression for my own sake, and will not remember thy sins. Put me in remembrance, let us plead together. Declare thou that thou mayest be justified. Thy first father hath sinned, and thy teachers have transgressed against me. Therefore, I have profaned the princes of the sanctuary, and have given Jacob to the curse, and Israel to reproaches. And continuing in chapter 44, yet now hear, O Jacob my servant, and Israel whom I have chosen. Thus saith the Lord that made thee and formed thee from the womb, which will help thee. Fear not, O Jacob, my servant, and thou, Jeshurun, whom I have chosen. For I will pour water upon him that is thirsty, and floods upon the dry ground. I will pour my spirit upon thy seed, and my blessing upon thine offspring. And they shall spring up as among the grass, as willows by the watercourses. One shall say, I am the Lord's, and another shall call myself by the name of Jacob, and another shall subscribe with his hand unto the Lord, and surname himself by the name of Israel. Thus saith the Lord, the King of Israel, and his Redeemer, the Lord of hosts. I am the first, and I am the last, and beside me there is no God. And who, as I, shall call and shall declare it, and set it in order for me, since I appointed the ancient people? And the things that are coming and shall come, let them shew unto them. Fear ye not, neither be afraid. Have not I told thee from that time, and have I declared it? Ye are even my witnesses. Is there a God beside me? Yea, there is no God. I know not any. They that make a graven image are all of them vanity, and their delectable things shall not profit. And they are their own witnesses. They see not nor know, that they may be ashamed. Who hath formed a God, or molten a graven image that is profitable for nothing? Behold, all his fellows shall be ashamed, and the workmen they are of men. Let them all be gathered together. Let them stand up, yet they shall fear, and they shall be ashamed together. The smith with the tongs both worketh in the coals, and fashioneth it with hammers, and worketh it with the strength of his arms. Yea, he is hungry, and his strength faileth. He drinketh no water and is faint. Carpenter stretcheth out his rule. He marketh it out with a line. He fitteth it with planes, and he marketh it out with a compass, and maketh it after the figure of a man, according to the beauty of a man, that it may remain in the house. He heweth him down cedars, and taketh the cypress and the oak, which he strengthens for himself among the trees of the forest. He planteth an ash, and the rain doth nourish it. Then shall it be for a man to burn, for he will take thereof and warm himself, yea, he kindleth it, and baketh bread. Yea, he maketh God, and worshipeth it. He maketh it a graven image, and falleth down thereto. He burneth part thereof in the fire, which part thereof he eateth flesh. He roasteth roast, and is satisfied. Yea, he warmeth himself, and saith, Aha, I am warm, I have seen the fire, and the residue thereof he maketh a god. Even his graven image he falleth down unto it, and worshipeth it, and prayeth unto it, and saith, Deliver me, for thou art my God. They have not known nor understood, for he hath shut their eyes, and they cannot see, and their hearts that they cannot understand. And none considereth it in his heart, neither is there knowledge nor understanding to say, I have burned part of it in the fire, yea, also I have baked bread upon the coals thereof. I have roasted flesh and eaten it. And shall I make the residue thereof an abomination? Shall I fall down to the stock of a tree? He feedeth on ashes, a deceived heart hath turned him aside, that he cannot deliver his soul, nor say, Is there not a lie in my right hand? Remember these, O Jacob and Israel, for thou art my servant. I have formed thee. Thou art my servant, O Israel. Thou shalt not be forgotten of me. I have blotted out as a thick cloud thy transgressions, and as a cloud thy sins. Return unto me, for I have redeemed thee. Sing, O ye heavens, for the Lord hath done it. Shout, ye lower parts of the earth. Break forth into singing, ye mountains, O forest, and every tree therein. For the Lord hath redeemed Jacob, and glorified himself in Israel. Some high-level thoughts from this passage. First, they use a lot of THs in the King James Version. That's all I know. If they'd had typewriters back then, those keys would have worn out first. So first, Israel has forsaken Yah, but he blots out really our transgressions for his own sake, and will not remember them. This is an important point. Yah races out our sins for his benefit, so we can have a relationship with him. He is perfect righteousness, and cannot have unrighteous buddies. We read about Yah's blessings upon Jeshurun, which is a pet name for Israel. We've discussed it briefly before. It's a symbolic name describing her ideal character, which she, or more properly, we, have as yet failed to exhibit. Yet, he loves us. Okay, here is 44:6. I'm going to have to, I do have a color, I'm sorry. Let me go to the Blue Letter Bible and look at Isaiah 44:6. All right. All right, you should be seeing the Blue Letter Bible website up here. Go down to 44:6. I'm going to go to Tools in a linear and expand so we get the English and the Hebrew side by side. Thus saith the Lord, and we see it's Yod-Heh-Wah-Heh, Yahuwah, the King, which is the word Melech, of Israel, his Redeemer, and his Redeemer, the Lord, Yahuwah, of hosts, Saba. This spelling says Saba, but this is really the Sadi. So we have that Saba, righteousness, Sadak, Melchizedek, the king of righteousness. We have that same root in there. I am the first, and I am the last, and beside me there is no other God. Elohim, no Elohim. Okay, back to the slides here. Oops. Okay, there we go, sorry. In 44:9 through 20, there is a discussion of idol worship, and the passage closes with a plea. And we see again in verse 23, he does this for his own glory. So keep that in mind. We certainly benefit, but it's not doing it primarily for us. He's doing it primarily for himself so that he can have fellowship with us. The benefit for us is that we get to have fellowship with him. Okay, we still have more, so turn to Romans 8, Romans chapter 8. I'm going to read the first 13 verses. This is the Tree of Life version translation. We all know how easy Paul is to understand, so I'm going to try to help with that. Therefore, there is now no condemnation for those who are in Messiah Yeshua. For the law of the Spirit of life in Messiah Yeshua has set you free from the law of sin and death. For what is impossible for the Torah, since it was weakened on account of the flesh, God has done, sending his own Son in the likeness of sinful flesh, and as a sin offering, he condemned sin in the flesh, so that the requirement of the Torah might be fulfilled in us, who do not walk according to the flesh, but according to the Ruach. For those who live according to the flesh set their minds on the things of the flesh, but those who live according to the Ruach set their minds on the things of the Ruach. For the mindset of the flesh is death, but the mindset of the Ruach is life and shalom. For the mindset of the flesh is hostile toward God, for it does not submit itself to the law of God, for it cannot. So those who are in the flesh cannot please God. However, you are not in the flesh, but in the Ruach, if indeed the Ruach Elohim dwells in you. Now, if anyone does not have the Ruach of Messiah, he does not belong to him. But if Messiah is in you, though the body is dead because of sin, yet the spirit is alive because of righteousness. And if the Ruach of the one who raised Yeshua from the dead dwells in you, the one who raised Messiah Yeshua from the dead will also give life to your mortal bodies through his Ruach who dwells in you. So then, brothers and sisters, we do not owe anything to the flesh to live according to the flesh. But if you live according to the flesh, you must die. But if by the Ruach you put to death the deeds of the body, you shall live. I'm going to read an excerpt from David Stern's Jewish New Testament commentary regarding verse 2. Let me go back to that. It's pretty much, if you read this without context or with a church mindset, see, pretty much the law is done away with. And you may get faced with that at some point. Once they get tired of trying to beat you up over Galatians or Hebrews, they may say, well, what about Romans? So let's read Stern's commentary here. Torah of the Spirit, the Torah of sin and death. What are these two? Here is the wrong answer. Yeshua gave a good Torah of the Spirit, which produces life, in contrast with the bad Mosaic law that produces only sin and death. So that's what you will likely hear, or you could well hear from someone who is trying to undermine what we believe. Yeshua gave a good Torah of the Spirit, which produces life, in contrast with the bad Mosaic law that produces only sin and death. But this interpretation not only contradicts Shaul, Paul's arguments in chapters 3 and 7, but is implicitly anti-Semitic as well. That's the wrong answer. The right answer is that the Torah of the Spirit is the Mosaic law properly apprehended by the power of the Holy Spirit in believers. What Shaul elsewhere calls the Torah's true meaning, which the Messiah upholds. And this is usually rendered as the law of Christ. The second Torah, in Stern's version, the Complete Jewish Bible, is written lowercase and put in quotation marks because it is sin's Torah. In other words, not a God-given Torah at all, but an anti-Torah. More specifically, it is the Mosaic law improperly understood and perverted by our old sinful nature into a legalistic system of earning God's approval by our own works. So the interpretation of verse 2, so look at that while I read this paraphrase of Stern's, can be paraphrased and expanded as follows. The Torah, as understood and applied through the Spirit, thereby giving life in union with Messiah Yeshua, has set me free from the aspects of the Torah that stimulate me to sin, fill me with an irredeemable guilt, and condemn me to death. Okay, and that's the end of Stern's commentary. I think if you understand that main idea, the passage made sense. In here, we also see confirmation of something. It's in verse 6 that Dr. Manzo shared. If we do not have a lifestyle, we have a death style. I'm not sure if that's an exact quote, but it was something along the way. There is no middle ground. Your light switch is either in the on or lifestyle position, or it's in the off or death style position. Okay, so hopefully that interpretation of verse 2 will help you understand actually a lot of Romans, not just this particular passage. I'm going to flip ahead to Hebrews 10. And I'm going to read the first 14 verses. The Torah has a shadow of the good things to come, not the form itself of the realities. For this reason, it can never, by means of the same sacrifices they offer constantly, year after year, make perfect those who draw near. Otherwise, would they not have ceased to be offered, since the worshippers, cleansed once and for all, would no longer have consciousness of sins? But in these sacrifices is a reminder of sins year after year. For it is impossible for the blood of bulls and goats to take away sins. So when Messiah comes into the world, he says, sacrifice and offering you did not desire, but a body you prepared for me. In whole burnt offerings and sin offerings you did not delight. Then I said, behold, I come to do your will, O God. In the scroll of the book it is written of me. And verses 5, 6, and 7 are a quote from Psalm 40. Starting at the quote, he said, sacrifice and offering. Okay, after saying above, sacrifices and offerings and whole burnt offerings and sin offerings you did not desire, nor did you delight in them, those which are offered according to Torah. Then he said, behold, I come to do your will. He takes away the first to establish the second. By his will we have been made holy through the offering of the body of Messiah Yeshua once and for all. Indeed, every Cohen stands day by day, serving and offering the same sacrifices again and again, which can never take away sins. But on the other hand, when this one offered for all time a single sacrifice for sins, he sat down at the right hand of God, waiting from then on until his enemies are made a footstool for his feet. For by one offering he has perfected forever those being made holy. I want to read Stern's commentary on verses 8 through 10 to clarify the current state of sacrificial offerings. Notice that God does not take away the Torah, rather he takes away the first system of sacrifices and priesthood in order to set up the second within the framework of the one eternal Torah. Moreover, it is not necessary to suppose that this taking away prohibits all animal sacrifices by the Levitical priesthood. The author's point relates to only the sin offering, and offering for sins is no longer needed. Because the second sin offering system is effectual in a way that the first never was. The other animal sacrifices and Levitical priesthood could be continued without eclipsing the preeminent role of Yeshua's once-for-all sacrifice and eternal priesthood. Even the sin offering ritual could theoretically be continued, but only if it were regarded as a memorial and not as effective in itself. And my note is that when we commemorate Passover, we certainly review the value of the original Passover as a commemoration, and then culminate with a review of Yahusha's sacrifice as the final sin offering. And back to Stern's commentary, just as it was never more than a shadow, so now, if it should be resumed, which would presuppose the rebuilding of the temple at some future time, it could not be more than a reminder of the great deliverance provided in Yeshua's death as our final and permanently effective sin offering, and his resurrection as our Kohen Gadol, which means our high priest. The topic of sacrifice, as conveyed in the Bible, is controversial and opinions vary widely. And here's kind of where my lesson plan went off the rails, so hang on. As Vicky would say, the pilot is experiencing turbulence, so please return to your seat and sit down and shut up. From this passage in Hebrews, we ought to take away, that is, take out of his word through exegesis rather than put into his word through eisegesis, that Yahushua's death on the execution stake ended the need for sacrificial atonement for sin. As we read in Leviticus, there are other sacrifices detailed, and if there is a third temple with a legitimate functioning Levitical priesthood, I would expect those to resume. On that note, I'd originally written, I will end with one more passage. I will continue with one more passage from the closing verses of Revelation 21. So, off to Revelation. And I'm going to start reading at verse 10. Then he carried me away in the Ruach to a great and high mountain, and he showed me the holy city, Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God. And this is John speaking. Having the glory of God, her radiance like a most precious stone, like jasper, sparkling like crystal. She had a great high wall with 12 gates, and above the gates 12 angels. On the gates were inscribed the names of the 12 tribes of Bnei Israel. 3 gates on the east, 3 gates on the north, 3 gates on the south, and 3 gates on the west. And the wall of the city had 12 foundations, and on them the 12 names of the 12 emissaries of the Lamb. The angel speaking with me had a gold measuring rod, like every good angel, to measure the city and its gates and walls. The city is laid out as a square, its length the same as its width. He measured the city with a rod, 1,200 stadia. Its length and width and height are equal. Some with the knowledge of what a stadia is tell me this is about 1,500 miles on the side. He also measured its wall 144 cubits by human measurement, which was also an angel's measurement. The material of the city wall was jasper, while the city was pure gold, clear as glass. The foundations of the city wall were decorated with every kind of precious stone. The first foundation was jasper, the second sapphire, the third chalcedony, the fourth emerald, the fifth sardonyx, the sixth carnelian, the seventh yellow topaz, the eighth beryl, the ninth topaz, the 10th chrysoprase, the 11th jacinth, 12th amethyst. The 12 gates were 12 pearls. Each of the gates was from a single pearl. The street of the city was pure gold, transparent as glass. I saw no temple in her, for its temple is Adonai Elohai Sabaoth and the Lamb. The city has no need for the sun or the moon to shine on it, for the glory of God lights it up, and its lamp is the Lamb. The nations shall walk by its light, and the kings of the earth shall bring their glory into it. Its gates shall never shut by day, for there shall be no night there. And they shall bring into it the glory and honor of the nations, and nothing unholy shall ever enter it, nor anyone doing what is detestable or false, but only those written in the book of life. We go back to verse 22 that reveals there is no temple in the New Jerusalem. This is my opinion, is that a third temple will never be built. Let me clarify that. A physical structure may be built that is called the third temple, but that won't make it so. I'm not dogmatic about this. I reserve the right to change my opinion, but that's my opinion right now. For now, my belief is that the set-apart remnant is the temple, each and every one of us, of the Ruach HaKodesh. I'm going to look at 2 more verses in Matthew 24. So if you want to turn to Matthew 24, just feel free. I'm going to start at verse 15. So when you see the abomination of desolation, which was spoken of through Daniel the prophet, standing in the holy place, let the reader understand, then those in Judea must flee to the mountains. In verse 15, many assume the words translated holy place refer to the temple. And that is why many believe that the third temple must be built so that the abomination of desolation, and there's great discussion about whether that's a person or a thing, can inhabit this holy place where they think is the temple. I contend that it is not the temple, and here's why. There is a perfectly good Greek word used 71 times in the New Testament. I'm going to find it for you. Change my share. Give me a minute to move around here in Blue Letter Bible. So where are we, Matthew 4? Okay, so look at verse 1. And Jesus went out and departed from the temple, and his disciples came to him for to shew him the buildings of the temple. So we're going to look at this word. The temple here is the word Hiron. Not sure I'm saying that right. And if we open this link up here, you can see all the different places. 71 times that it's used in the New Testament, all the way through. The devil, when Satan took Yahusha up on the mountain, the holy city, and set him upon the pinnacle of the temple, and on about the temple of God, temple. Same word, this GH or Strong's G2411. Okay, so that's all the places that's used here. That's the temple. So, unfortunately, that's not, or fortunately, that's not the word used in the verse in question here, which was verse 15. Let me go down to 15. Sorry if my scrolling's. And just to review 24:15. When you therefore shall see the abomination of desolation spoken by a prophet stand in the holy place, and in 16, then let them which be in Judea flee into the mountains. So I'm going to open up the Greek here. When ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet standing in the holy place. And we're going to look at this word holy. You can see holy place. The Greek word there is hagios. And the other word for place is topos. So since Vera is our resident Greek, let me ask her, what, in your experience, what does the word hagios mean? Pardon me? Saint. Our Greek expert says that hagio means saint. So
Hagios, Andreas, Hagios.
when we honeymooned in Crete, every other place was named Agios this or Agios that, Saint Nicholas or Saint Antonius or Saint Santa Claus or whatever it might be. So it means saint. Topos means a place, but an inhabited place or a place in a book, something marked off from surrounding spaces, an individual spot limited in occupancy, rather than a large locality. So it doesn't talk about the temple, it talks about the abomination will be standing in the saints. That's what we have so far, but let's take a little deeper and find out what the word translated as standing comes from in the Greek. So this is the word here, histemi. Let me expand on that. Histemi, sorry. And if you look in this first paragraph, it's translated in the following manner: stand, set, establish, stand still, stand by, miscellaneous variations of stand. So primarily, certainly stand, but that's not the only meaning of the word. So it also translates as set, establish, stand still, and stand by. So let's take a look at the BSV, which is the Bristow Standard Version of Matthew 24, verse 15 and 16. So when you see the abomination of desolation, which was spoken of through Daniel the prophet, established in the saints, escape to the mountains. So I want you to take this in the context. So those of you that watch the Antichrist video that we shared, that was on the Parable of the Vineyard website, it was part by a gentleman named Michael, and then the last part was by Adam Fink, who's the host of the Parable of the Vineyard. When the abomination of desolation, which was spoken of through Daniel the prophet, is established in the saints, escape to the mountains. So remember what we talked about there, that a false Messiah is, in my opinion, at this point, again, I reserve the right to continue learning, is the abomination of desolation that is being established in believers. So that was a big drop the mic moment for me. Okay, I'd be remiss if I didn't share this from 1 Corinthians. Don't you know that you're God's temple and the Ruach Elohim dwells among you? If anyone destroys God's temple, God will destroy him, for God's temple is holy and you are that temple. Interestingly, the word translated as temple temple, and I think 3 times in these 2 verses, is a different Greek word than is used when talking about the temple in general. And this usage, it refers to the holy place and the Holy of Holies within the overall temple. Is the abomination of desolation something that can coexist in your temple with the Ruach HaKodesh or the Ruach Elohim? It is not. One will replace the other. So a false Messiah will replace the Ruach Elohim, or the Ruach Elohim will replace this false Messiah. So take your pick, death style or lifestyle. I'm going to close with these thoughts, and then I'll open up for some whatever conversation you might have. I'm sure this didn't go where you were thinking it was going. Okay, we do not believe in we do not belong to a secret God. We do not believe in a secret God. He reveals all in his proper timing. It's not, and that time is now, when the knowledge is increasing greatly. Always remember that Yah forgives sins for his benefit, not ours, though we most certainly are beneficiaries. If we do not have a righteous lifestyle, then we have an unrighteous death style. If your temple is not filled with the Ruach HaKodesh, then it is going to be filled by a false Messiah, by the abomination that causes desolation. And the righteous remnant, this is, again, Bill's opinion, is the temple of the Ruach Elohim. Okay, I'll shut up, and I'm going to put next week's reading on, or you can look at, and I'll try to send it out before Thursday. But I wanted to open the floor for any comments, thoughts, or say questions, but I'm leery. Let's go. All right, any thoughts? Anything they want to share?
I'd just like to agree with you on what you said.
Say that again.
Okay, I'm sorry. I just wanted to agree with you about what you said about the Ruach HaKodesh being in us today represents the temple. The verses that you read in chapter 2 of 2 Thessalonians tells us that there is a violation of the temple. And I believe that's ultimately what's being referred to in that. And that violation is the influence of the anti-Messiah spirit coming into us against the Ruach HaKodesh of our Elohim. I agree too that the third temple that is in the minds of many rabbinic Jews today to rebuild, I believe that is just an attempt to sustain the apostasy that they've been in for the last 2,000 years. The only true temple can only be that remnant that you mentioned in your final thoughts. That remnant is the temple and will represent the righteousness of Elohim. So I'm with you 100% on your final thoughts. That was a very good assessment of where we are today. So thank you for that.
Yeah, and thank you for I commend Second Thessalonians, 2nd chapter, for people to read. It does certainly support what we've just been talking about. So thanks for that, Jeff.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Vera.
Has anyone seen a translation that says the abomination that causes desolation?
Yes.
Where is that? I can't remember.
I'd have to hunt for it a little bit.
Everything I have, it says the abomination of.
Oh, let's do a little.
I've seen it somewhere, Vera.
I have two.
What was the verse again? Revelation 21.
Yeah.
What's what?
Yeah, I don't know. I remember, I'm having a senior moment.
No, it's, I see it translated.
That's what it does.
So this is Bible Hub, which is,
Who translates it that way?
no, wait a minute, I got the wrong one. Bear with me here.
Do you refer to that as the atomic bomb? Oh,
That's right. That's a good example.
Matthew 24 is where I need to go. I'm sorry.
Abomination that lays waste.
tell them.
Yeah.
One is, kind of more
Jeff just found something.
where,
And in Daniel chapter 12, verse 11, the
I read that.
the translation I have in the scriptures version,
Yeah,
that from the time that which is continual is taken away, and the abomination that lays waste is set up.
yeah. Mine
290 days.
is an abomination of desolation is set up. And one is more Greco-Roman in that it's like a noun thing, but yours is more verb, action oriented.
What's the verse?
Abomination that causes.
What's the
It
verse?
lays waste, yeah, causes desolation.
Yeah, it's Daniel
12:11.
12.
12?
Yeah, 12.
12:11 in Daniel.
All right, let's look at them. Are you seeing the Bible, Blue Letter Bible up on the screen?
Is that
And
right?
Day reference too in Daniel, by the way.
And from that time, and from the time that the daily sacrifice shall be taken away, and the abomination that maketh desolate set up, there shall be
See?
1,290 days.
That's it.
That maketh desolate. You see what I mean?
Exactly.
That is a action verb thing,
It causes desolation.
causes. And my TLV translation is still the abomination of
Yeah.
desolation. And I think
Yeah,
it's
I believe.
clear.
Yeah, I believe it makes it more accurate when you say that it makes desolation.
Yes.
Maketh, don't forget it's maketh.
Yeah.
Maketh.
Maketh.
Yeah.
Okay, good discussion. We'll have to continue this, but
It's a big difference.
to me, it was eye-opening when I realized that the holy place talked about there in Matthew is not the temple.
No, it's not the temple, is it?
Not a physical
As a building such.
No, because where is that place we stayed on our honeymoon? Agios something, Nicholas.
Nicholas.
Yeah, Saint Nicholas. It's all over Greece. Agios, Hagios, Hagios.
Everything's a saint there.
Yeah, everything's the same.
Okay, any other conversations? I'm out of conversation here. Okay, I'll close this in prayer and we'll stop the recording. Abba, we thank you for this set apart day. We thank you for the time together. And again, we pray that the words we've heard are from you. If they're not, pray that you would correct us. If they are, thank you for preparing us to defend our faith in a better way than we were. I'm so grateful for your word, and just continue to look forward to studying it and not just learning it, but doing it, taking what we have learned and taking those actions necessary to put those words into action and to use that as a means of glorifying and honoring you. We love you, and we thank you for this, for your work. Just pray for your blessings on members of this fellowship and their families. Watch over us, guide us, protect us, order our every step. Just pray for good rest for the rest of this Shabbat, for all those listening. We just ask for all this in Yahushua's name. Amen.
Amen.